Listening leadership style is not something that you just in a moment create or generate. So it is habituation. You have to practice listening to your audience and be around people who are great thinkers, who are capable of uncovering options and different solutions to a problem. So they are great problem solvers, but a lot of the things we do as humans, it's through debate and it's through discussion.
Welcome to the Leading Minds podcast, where we delve deep inside the minds of the top life sciences executives. Join us as we unravel how they think, their vision for the industry, the purpose that drives them, and how they are moving the industry forward while fueling growth for their companies and their teams.
This is Leading Minds, and I'm your host, Jasmeet Sani. In every episode, we meet a leader who has made a lasting impact in the life sciences industry and continues to drive the industry forward. We go beyond the name and the title to unravel their personality, their beliefs, their mission, and most importantly, to understand how their brilliant minds are changing the world for the better. Before we get started, I want to thank our exclusive sponsor, Axtria, a leading global provider of cloud software and data analytics solutions to the life sciences industry. Now, on to today's episode. I'm truly honored to introduce our guest, Dr. Gurdyal Kalsi. Gurdyal is a seasoned executive, a physician scientist, and a leader engaged in developing novel therapeutic approaches for challenging diseases in rare, orphan, cell, and gene therapy areas. He's a veteran in global transformational R&D leadership with over 2 decades of experience specializing in pharmaceutical and critical care medicine. His work has resulted in development and commercialization of several important human pharma drugs. Gurdyal started his professional journey in the UK and earned his MFPM from the UK Joint Royal Colleges of Physicians and medical degrees in medicine and surgery from the Kalsi Medical School. He transitioned into the biopharmaceutical space, first in neuroscience and then in inflammation and immune modulation therapies. He later moved to the US and was instrumental in several strategic investments and collaborations between the public-private sectors and US federal agencies. He currently serves as the Chief Medical Officer of AdventHealth and Asklepion Pharmaceuticals and manages a diverse R&D portfolio. In the past, he has been the Chief Medical Officer and held roles of increasing responsibilities at other organizations including Colon Group, Emergent Biosolutions, MDS Pharma, Icon, and Lundbeck. He was also intimately engaged in COVID and long COVID syndrome research and serves on several federal and public boards. Gurdyal, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jasmeet.
So Gurdyal, let's start with your professional journey. You have vast experience in drug development with expertise across clinical, medical affairs, regulatory, and several adjoining functional areas. For our audience, can you please provide a quick overview of your professional journey? And it will be great if we can start with how you got into this field.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jasmeet. It's my pleasure to be on this podcast. I'd like to begin with a quote that has often been passed around, I'm sure. And in my particular case, it holds true. In the journey of life, the clearest footprints are often printed on the muddiest road. So my road has also been pretty much in a similar fashion crafted over a number of years, moving from clinic to R&D to commercial space over a period of 20 plus years, and moving from continent to continent, gaining experience and exposure of different regulatory agencies across the globe has resulted in building me to the point where I am today. I take great pride in the good fortune I've had along the way in bringing multiple products to the market and learning from how those products provided their challenges unique to each therapy space. And having worked across multiple therapeutics, it has defined for me an approach that I think can be applied across different products and human usage.
Right. And did you always wanted to be in medicine and clinical? What was kind of the inspiration growing up?
Yeah, I have to say my story is that since I was 7 years old, I used to tell my parents that the only profession I want to pursue is I want to be a doctor. Now, it's not very unusual in Indian families, but I belong to a family where there are many, many doctors. So I'm not sure if that had an influence on my own personal endeavors. But I think my inner spirit has always been there to serve a community. And that's principally what led me from a spiritual and professional perspective to pursue a career where I can be of service.
Amazing. And thanks for sharing your journey, Gurdyal. Now, if I were to shift to the present day, you are the Chief Medical Officer of Asklepion and AdventHealth, but that I believe is one of the leadership positions you hold. Can you please provide some details about your current responsibilities and areas you're focusing on?
Yeah, so my current responsibilities are all encompassing from discovery to development to commercialization of any given asset. So in the current role, we are targeting rare and ultra rare diseases in children. A lot of unmet need in this space, and hence there are not very many organizations willing to invest in small populations. To give you an example, where there is perhaps a very under 100,000 patient population, usually pharma likes to indulge in larger populations. So I think we're doing something which is serving a community's unmet need, and it is difficult to treat areas.
Right. And as you said, you're working in areas that are, I believe, are kind of shaping the future of the life sciences industry. Rare orphan drugs and cell and gene therapies are going to be some of the most important drivers of innovation in our industry. So I want to get your perspective on the evolutionary trends you are experiencing. So from your vantage point, can you tell our audience where you see our industry is headed and some key drivers of this evolution?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Jasmeet. And the way I would like to respond to it is that over a number of decades, there's always been a push for advancement in delivery of healthcare. And a lot of that is a trigger for what we do in terms of coming up with treatment solutions. So the current state is that the evolving paradigm has led us to believe that over the 30, 40 decades of regulated human medicinal products coming into market, a majority of them are not cures. So the evolution that is occurring now more recently is to try and focus on therapies such as gene therapeutics, deletions, additions, transformations, which lead us to providing a treatment solution that is one and done, rather than symptomatic, rather than being given again and again for some gain, but you're always going to remain with that disease. So I think that is where a lot is happening in terms of the biology, in terms of the pharmacology aspects of how we address certain targets. The key thing is that the disease area must be monogenic, meaning it must have a mutation in a single gene at this point in time. And where I see things moving is that we will be able to handle heterogeneous multiple mutation diseases in due course where there are more than one pathways to address. But right now we are succeeding. As an example, in sickle cell disease space, there are two gene therapies which are nearing approval by the FDA towards the end of December. These are by companies like Bluebird Bio and Vertex. So I think, and there are many other gene therapies like for thalassemia and a number of other dystrophies, muscular dystrophies that have come through. There are some eye conditions that have also had these treatments. And the other key thing to mention to our audience is that these cures don't come easy. They do take a long time to develop, and then they do have some way to go before the safety aspect of these treatments is fully realized. And lastly, it's the economic paradigm. If we do bring treatments which are one and done, they usually come with a hefty price point, $1.5 million, $2 million a pop. So I think this is where we still can improve things, and the cost should come down over a period of time. The populations that it serves are usually carefully selected, and then comes the AI piece. If we can get more and more of the bioinformatics included in diagnostics, in discovery, in development, I think we can fast track some of these treatment solutions.
Thanks for those insights, Gurdyal. As I mentioned, you are right at the center of this evolution. So I must congratulate you on the critical role you're playing in industry's transformation and the role you're playing in helping shape its future. Now, I know you talk about keeping patient voice at the heart of decision making and the important role that the technology and data are playing in industry's evolution. Can you elaborate on it a little bit?
Yes, Jasmeet. Historically, clinical trial designs have always been without a patient voice necessarily being inserted. Now, more and more, it's becoming clear that what is of interest and of paramount importance to the patient has to be included in the endpoints that we include in any clinical trial design. And also from a point of view of outcomes of interest. Because we're serving a community, then why aren't we including them upstream in decision making? So patient voice is now centered even within the framework of agencies. They seem to be included in guidance compilations by the FDA and similar agencies. And companies, big and small, have chief patient officers in their organizations. So it is taking off in a direction where it should. And it can save us a lot of money in terms of leading us down a path which might not be of benefit to the patient directly. So I think this is where the rubber meets the road.
And in terms of, you talked about AI, in terms of the importance of the technology and data, do you see that to continued important role in this field?
Absolutely. I think if without a doubt, it doesn't need a lot more in terms of creating the right algorithms that will then lead us to answering the questions that we are asking of it. So it's not, as you see in Chat GPT and similar sort of tools, there is an art and there is a science put together. What it needs to translate into is accuracy. Accuracy in terms of predicting, and that's where I think it still needs a lot of work. But inputs that we make, for example, on biomarkers in clinical trials, they can be condensed and coordinated and integrated in such a way that a human brain may not be able to do. But at the end of the day, if we say biomarker A, B, or C seems to give us a result that we are interested from a patient perspective and also from a regulatory science perspective, you can see how using endpoints of that nature can drive a program to its fruition without necessarily having to invest 10 years into it. And so I think in that sort of context, machine learning is going to start giving us the outcomes that we are really keen on.
Right. And it's going to play a very important role across the value chain, right? We're talking about drug development and clinical and so on. But as we go into commercial as well, it's playing a very important role.
Absolutely.
So that's critical.
Yeah. In my medical affairs role and responsibilities, we do incorporate AI tools in order to target the effort put by medical science liaisons in the field, because everyone is busy and you just want to be able to create thought leadership in a very systematic way to support a product in the market. So it is really helping in creating the ratio that is successful between a MSL and a KOL meeting and what that MSL must bring to the KOL meeting. And all of that, I think, is optimization, efficiency gains. It's a win-win for everybody.
And that's great because I think as humans and systems kind of come together, I think that's kind of the evolution that we are seeing, where humans and systems are trying to kind of work together to make it not like a AI-based system versus a human-based system, right? So that's an important evolution that our industry is going to go through. And it's, end of the day, it's going to be important and valuable for the end customer, which is our patients.
Yeah,
right?
So
that's critical.
And another example just made in the clinical side, imaging, radiology, for example, there's a huge data set that runs through and holds people up in reporting the results. Now, a lot of it is subject of consideration for automation. On the dermatology side, for instance, there are a lot of images. A lot of the healthcare depends on imaging data. And if you can put it together in such a way that it helps in giving options of diagnosis, I think it will help clinicians also to move faster, and they can then can give their opinion. It's never going to be that the human brain will be completely replaced, but it is only making it more able to comfortably come up with alternative solutions. And you can also ensure that you don't miss anything.
Absolutely. Again, the coming together of the human and the systems is going to be very critical.
We'll continue the conversation after this quick message from our exclusive sponsor, Axtria.
Improving commercial and patient outcomes. That's our goal at Axtria. We are at the forefront of life sciences digital transformation with the most advanced cloud software and data analytics solutions, enabling companies to manage data, derive artificial intelligence-powered insights, and streamline business operations across the product lifecycle. Because of our deep expertise in the life sciences domain, we are the top choice for life sciences companies for their digital and business transformation initiatives. We work with all of the top global life sciences companies who consider us their true partners, driven primarily by our most important differentiators, our people, and our inclusive and progressive culture, which is focused on developing the life sciences leaders of tomorrow. With every project, we are helping our customers achieve commercial success. But more importantly, we are helping them improve health outcomes for patients. See what we can do for you at axtria.com.
Now, going back to your professional journey, it goes without saying that you have seen so many ups and downs in your journey, right? And a lot of different experiences. So I have actually two questions there. First one, you talked about how you went from medicine, clinical, and now in commercial areas, right? So you're kind of widespread across the value chain. So tell me how you're seeing that evolution happening, because it used to be traditionally that you go into one side of the business and you remain there all your life. That was like a typical career journey. And now we are seeing more and more of progression from one function to the other and coming together of these functional areas. Can you tell me a little bit about what's happening in the industry and why is that taking place?
Yeah, so I think the trigger is to have a more optimized talent within the framework of bringing a successful product to the market. And so having people scale their journey is very important. So what I did in my case was I wanted to accelerate my growth. And so I took the position within a clinical research organization. Icon PLC was the company where I spent a lot of time, 4 years, and it was in hands-on roles as well as in executive strategic roles. And I think it gave me exposure to multiple pharma, biotech companies. I created a role for people who are into consulting. And within that group, which we called EPIC, we created a mechanism of supporting multiple companies who are in the early discovery stage and trying to move a product from translational stage to a first-in-human clinical stage. Or there were companies who were looking at multiple candidates and not really sure which one they should progress with. So I think with those kind of scenarios, it was clear to me that I want to learn how different company cultures are and how different leaders within those institutions create their portfolios, and how do they then have the rationalized mechanisms for advancing their therapeutics. So within 4 or 5 years, I was able to touch 40, 50 different companies and had a good experience coming from different therapy spaces. So I think what we are doing now and how the system is changing is that instead of having one person doing one job, it has become imperative that people should be multitasking and they should be across the board talent rather than simply in one domain. Of course, you need to have a degree of experience, a depth and breadth of experience within the therapy space. So if you're working in, say, oncology, or you're working in cardiovascular medicine, it's important that you have that clinical experience as much as you can have before you migrate into the industry world. A lot of the times people think in the industry the doctors particularly are far removed from the patient. It's quite to the contrary. To be a physician in the industry, you have to have the abilities to be able to visualize the patient and the patient journey. So I think you have to be a very experienced, all-rounded person, even if you're working in a specific therapy space.
Yeah, that's an amazing perspective, because I think that's where we are headed. And we see a lot of this change coming in the industry, which is kind of new. And for some of the company, it's taking them a bit of a time to actually adjust to the new ways of working in these new therapy areas, because they need to be developed and they need to be commercialized very differently than the traditional model has been.
Yeah, and a lot of it, one big thing that is changing is big pharma not necessarily is going to be the champion of discovery. So there's a lot of small startup biotechs that are coming up with innovation, and then they become acquisition targets. So which is why science is not a domain only for the few. It could be anywhere within an academia unit that translates into a successful outcome. It could be in a 10 people company. It doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And now to the second part of my professional journey question. As I said, we go through ups and downs, right? So what were some of the critical decisions or events or people who have impacted your career? Can you tell our audience what are some of those key things that shaped your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the more I reflect back, majority of my learning experiences were based on interfacing and sitting across the table with thought leaders and with regulatory agencies. So when you have to present a certain data set for approval to a regulatory authority and persuade them that the evidence is sufficient enough for you to be granted an approval, it does take a team to do that. And it's important that the requirements for evaluation are met. So it's important that you present the evidence that addresses the needs of the regulator. And it's also important that beyond a shadow of doubt, the evidence provides statistical significance to the endpoints that are included and pre-agreed with the agencies. So I think it's a very regimented path. And what I've learned is I've failed a number of times in securing success in, for example, phase 2, mid-stage. We've had to go back to the bench and rework things based on the regulatory input that we receive, whether it's from European Medicine Agency or from the FDA or any other premier tier regulatory agency. So I've learned a lot that don't rush things. That's one. And try to be systematic in your approach. Don't cut any corners. And don't try to get to a commercial product by doing the smallest clinical trial. Now, of course, in rare diseases, they tend to be small clinical trials. But even there, you have to make sure that the population you're serving is well represented. There's a lot of call these days to diversity. So the other learning is in the olden days, there was not as much emphasis on patient voice, not as much emphasis on diversity. And most of the drugs that were approved, they were based on a singular population. As we know, there are apprehensions in certain populations in terms of clinical trial or clinical research participation. And since the pandemic, that hesitancy to an extent has actually increased in those populations, but also across the board. So how do you bring about a change? It's also being inclusive of patient advocates and making sure that your trial design is meeting the end result of the population that you're going to serve. I've learned a lot in terms of suspended products, for example, and then having to go back and reinstate them because determination is important if you think that you do have a product for a particular market sector. And there are times I've been in situations where it has been a grueling task to be sitting in a hearing, a public hearing, an advisory board hearing, where you are a subject of 2 days of conversation between various experts. So those are the kind of experiences that shape you and also ground you and make you more considerate in terms of how you value the asset that you are developing and advancing and how you're going to take care of the longer term. So I give you another one example where the cell line I was working with had in it a contaminant and it became a clinical hold for a CMC reason. So it is very important that we don't actually say, okay, I have launched the product in the market, even if we think there is some defect in the product. It's important not to then have to face perhaps litigations and to face harm to the patient, because as a physician, your first oath is do no harm. And so it's important to clean up the cell line, make sure that you don't have anything that is going to be oncogenic in due course. So I think I've had I've just mentioned a few, but I've had quite a few experiences that have taught me on how to avoid challenges of a kind that can stall your development and slow you down.
And I love how you responded to that question, because you talked about the key things or instances from your practical experience and learnings that actually shaped your career and how you think about these things, right? So I really love that response. Now, what is your advice for professionals who are aspiring to be leaders of tomorrow? What are some of the key attributes they should develop?
I think for me, first and foremost is integrity. It's very important to be an accountable leader who does things with this in mind, that it could be one of your family members who's going to receive the product that you are engineering or producing. So responsible, service-oriented, making sure that you're not just trying to advance on the basis of commercial success, but it leaves behind a legacy. So legacy, I've always driven my career with what will I be proud of in X number of years when I look back. And so I think integrity and legacies are the two key things that have driven me in this service orientation.
I love those, integrity and legacy. Some wonderful nuggets of advice for the professionals that are trying to become leaders of tomorrow. Now, it goes without saying that you're extremely busy in the multiple roles you play, and also as a leading mind who's helping shape the industry's future. Can you tell our audience how you continue to learn and grow despite your busy schedule?
I think being a listening person helps you to learn better. And a listening leadership style is not something that you just in a moment create or generate. So it is a habituation. You have to practice listening to your audience and be around people who are great thinkers, who are capable of uncovering options and different solutions to a problem. So they are great problem solvers, but a lot of the things we do as humans, it's through debate and it's through discussion. So I think it's important that we also have a mindset where we question ourselves and we reflect on what we believe in, and not necessarily just think that I'm right and the other person is wrong. Yeah, so I think that is what I would say drives entrepreneurship as well, where yes, you can be an entrepreneur if you're the CEO of a company, but are you a CEO who actually has the ability to empower everyone around them, especially the people who are brought in as a talent pool for that organization? And so I think decision making is much more sounder if you build a character of leadership.
Absolutely. And love your views on learning and growth. And you talked about listening, discussion, and having debates and kind of learning from that and growing based on that, which is very important and critical. Now, as the final question of the main segment, it would be great for the audience to learn how you balance your personal and professional lives. Can you please share how do you do it and any tips on ensuring equity across professional responsibilities and aspirations and the personal side?
Yeah, so what I tend to do in my calendar is I have every single day spread out, focused time for myself, half an hour here and there. So after every few hours of work, I have inserted a focused time where I will not do work. I'm going to simply either meditate or I'm going to reflect, but not do my day job, basically. And in so doing, it helps me to stay steady and stay emotionally calm. I write down a lot of things, so that's the other habit that I think helps me to process the information, the problems that I'm trying to resolve. And I also believe that spreading your wings across different responsibilities actually does help my brain to actually function properly, because seeing something in one direction does help you, but after a while it does lead to exhaustion as well. So I do tend to give myself lateral thinking abilities, moving into different teams and different people. So that gives me a bit of a pause time from a given problem in a given situation. So that's how I spread myself. And I also do things like, okay, now I'm going to take a walk. So during lunchtime every single day, I go for 1 hour walk, even when I'm in the office. And that usually helps me to clear my head. And there are times when I'll take a few members of my team alongside with me and we'll say, let's go for a walk together if they're willing. So those are the kind of things that I do.
That's great. It's incredible how you're able to balance both sides, and really nice to know that you're giving equal attention to both professional and personal goals. Now on to some fun questions. I will be asking you some rapid fire questions that you will need to respond quickly. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. What comes to mind when you hear the word leadership?
Service, accountability.
Awesome. Name your mentor or mentors or someone who has inspired you.
Nelson Mandela, Obama, Siddharth Mukherjee, to name a few on the leadership side.
What's some of the best advice you've received?
It's been from my father, and he's always emphasized that stay in the present, in the moment. He says everything is in the moment. The past is past and future is in the future. So stay in the moment and see how you can navigate.
That's great advice. Simple but amazing how it works, right? Name your favorite book or books.
I think there are quite a few. So I would say The Promised Land by Obama has been quite an inspiring book for me. It shows the journey of an individual from a humble background to becoming a US president. The Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. The Emperor of Maladies by Siddharth Mukherjee, which is a cancer biography.
Nice. What do you do in your free time?
I walk a lot. I exercise. I have a gym in the home. I tend to use often. I read a lot. And I like to, during summer months, do a fair amount of landscaping, gardening. I'm a painter as well, so I like to do fine art painting.
That's quite a bit. That's amazing. You can have dinner with any person in the world. Who would be the 3 people you would pick?
That's a tough one. I would pick somebody like Bill Gates. I would pick someone who is like Richard Branson, great thinkers who I admire. And the third one would be my wife, basically. I mean, she's a great thinker.
Yes. And the last one person you believe is the leading mind in our industry and you would recommend featuring on this podcast.
I think the leaders within a small biotech company could be one. I would say there's a CEO I know of in glycomimetics, could be a person you want to speak to. His name is Hirsute. And there's another one that I think if you're going for high-end, the CSO and CEOs of a company in New York called Regeneron. So they seem to inspire me because of how they have created a library of monoclonal antibodies. And they're specifically picking winners in how they drive the various different spaces. So from clinicians working in drug development in a space of 25 years or so, they've really moved the needle in that space.
Those are some amazing rapid fire responses, Gurdyal. Just love them. Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing your journey and advice with our audience. You've had an incredible journey and continue to make a lasting impact on the life sciences industry. It is making a difference not only for the organizations you're part of, but also so many patients who benefit from the therapies that you're bringing to the market. So many congratulations on all the success.
Thank you so much, Jasmeet. And if anyone wants to get in touch, they can go on my LinkedIn.
Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. Take care.
To the audience, you are the most important part of this show. Because of you, we are the top show in the life sciences industry. Thank you so much for joining us today, and tune in soon for the next episode of Leading Minds.
Thank you for listening to the Leading Minds podcast by Life Sciences Voice. Please share and hit subscribe with your favorite streaming platform. For more information, please visit our website at lifescivoice.com.